Welcome to True Crime by Indie Drop-In. Each week we feature an episode from the best independent creators. Hit subscribe for more great true crime content. If you would like to help Indie Drop-In support indie creators, you can buy us a coffee. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/indie drop-in or click the link in the show notes below. Today's episode is from Wierd Distractions podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to subscribe and follow on social media. Enjoy the show.
Begin. Distractions podcast, a podcast where we chat true crime, conspiracy theories, paranormal stories, folklore, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You know the drill. We've been doing this for 53 episodes and almost a year. So, I'm Alex.
I'm Christy.
And this week we are back talking true crime back in Louisiana.
Ooh, our fave.
Our fave. But before we dive in, a little bit of housekeeping. So we have our first Patreon supporter. Yeah, so thank you so much, Tom, for supporting us for this long, even not with Patreon, but joining our Patreon. If you want to get a shout out like Tom in a future episode, please check us out on Patreon. There's also really great other opportunities on Patreon, including bonus episodes. You get stickers, thank you card, our undying love and affection, all kinds of really great stuff up there.
Just lots of gratitude.
Did you say your name?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't know where I'm at right now. I'm so nervous but also excited to talk about this case today.
Oh dear.
As you can see, I'm holding a Stephen King novel in my hands. So
basically, it makes me nervous.
I know. But yeah, before we dive into that, Christy, what's your need for a distraction?
My need for distraction is a bit of both. I need one, I don't need one.
Okay.
One is, again, I'm having a good week. This has been some good weeks.
Nice.
So last week was, I forget what I was having a good week for, but this week is I got my new car.
Yes, and it's gorgeous.
So happy. I love it. And thankfully my other car got fixed when someone hit me and it's all done and everything. So I'm just a happy person that I got my new car. I do need a distraction, however, though, because I'll be driving that car lots to work now that I got a new job again. And I work a lot.
Yes.
The next 20 days.
I don't know how you do it. And
I'm still young, that's how I'm able to do it.
And still laugh and have morale, because I work a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and I'm already done. At the crisp age of 27, I'm already ready to retire, so...
I wish I could retire, but can't put into that pension.
Fair enough. And I think we mentioned so not 52, but 51, you had mentioned about the car accident you had, but we didn't really get into detail. Do you want to tell our listeners what happened?
I was in a roundabout.
And
some person behind me did not do no yielding.
Yeah. And she was in what? A Jeep?
A Jeep.
I have a very distaste for Jeeps.
Same, because I got a Jeep for my rental and I fucking hated it.
Yeah, that thing was monstrous.
Yeah, it was a bus and I was like, I fucking hate this thing. I would never buy this vehicle.
No, it was Jeep Grand Cherokee?
No, it was a Jeep Compass.
Oh.
Yeah.
That thing was massive though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to fill it up. You have to fill up your rentals when you return them.
Yeah, of course.
So I only used a quarter.
Oh no.
It was $40 to fill for a quarter. I was like...
In this economy.
I was like, how big is this fucking engine? I was like, I can't afford this.
No, absolutely not. No. My need for distraction, because now we're going to focus on moi for a hot minute second. Work sucks.
As always.
Yeah, so there's that. It's just been a weird past month and a bit. I've got...
Your clients or...
Well, just okay, so case in point. So as some of you may know, and I'll try and make this as short as possible. So as some of you may know, I drive over an hour to get to my office each day. Before pre-COVID, that was 5 days a week. I would drive over an hour and a bit one way to get to work.
Which is painstaking, yeah.
Which is painstaking. So now with COVID, I've been only going maybe once every couple weeks, once a month, what have you. So last Thursday... I went and I had 2 face-to-face appointments scheduled. I had 4 or 5 telephone appointments scheduled. Out of those appointments, I saw no one in person. because they both canceled, like, last minute.
A snap story sent me, and I totally missed it, but I didn't say anything, so I'm happy telling the story.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, totally missed it, because one client's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to work today. That's cool. And then the other one, who I haven't even met in person yet because she keeps canceling on me, was like, oh, I'm sorry, I have a migraine. I don't feel well, which totally valid response if I hadn't heard it 60 million times. So I was just...
You always excuse so much.
Yeah, I was just really peeved. And with that being said, it's just hard because obviously, as some of you may know at this point, we are in a third lockdown in Ontario.
I want to tap my eyes out.
Yeah, so that's another need for a distraction because let's just say Mr. Dougie Ford is not my, I'm not his biggest fan right now. I never was, but...
Him his egg sandwiches, not a fan.
Homeboy can go fuck himself. Hot take. Anyways, speaking of hot takes, let's get to true crime.
Hit me.
And I'm gonna say for this episode, there is a gargantuan trigger warning for rape, murder, assault of a teenager, some graphic details, as well as discussions about the death penalty. Alright, so this week we are talking about the death of Faith Hathaway and the cases and crimes surrounding this tragic incident. So we're going to start off with Faith. So Faith Colleen Hathaway was born December 17th, 1961 in Orlando, Florida, to mother Elizabeth. I don't know her biological father because Elizabeth at some point would go on to marry Vernon Harvey, who would be Faith's stepdad. Faith also had a younger sister, Elizabeth. I think Elizabeth was like 4 years younger than her. Not really for certain, but regardless, the family would move from Florida to good old Louisiana.
Good food.
Good food, good times, great atmosphere.
Great party.
5 stars. Would give more if I could. So, but they specifically lived around Mandeville, Louisiana. Elizabeth described Faith as an animal lover, a horseback rider, and someone who didn't meet a stranger, which I took as she was really friendly and outgoing. After graduating high school in 1980, Faith was on her way to join the U.S. Army. Elizabeth reported in a PBS Frontline interview, which, yes, I'm going to be heavily referencing this entire episode because it was really good for information.
That interview specifically?
Pardon?
That interview specifically?
Specifically, yes. That on May 27, 1980, Faith had went to work and was planning on going out afterwards with friends to celebrate this huge milestone of graduating high school and taking the leap into a whole new chapter in her life. Faith was reported to go to the Lakefront Disco in Mandeville for said celebration. So, you know, hitting up a little disco to celebrate. It's kind of like a club.
But they call it disco.
Yeah, they call it disco. It was the 80s.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
So, like...
That's what you did. That's what you listened to.
Exactly. Faith was going off to the military the next day. So, you know, she stayed out late, but obviously realized that it's probably a good time for me to call her in the wee hours of the morning.
Get some sleep, maybe?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, Faith would never be able to attend her induction into the Army.
Oh.
Faith was missing for 8 days before her body was found by investigator Mike Verando outside of a popular spot called Frick's Cave, which is approximately 45 minutes north of Mandeville. And based on an interview that was posted on the PBS Frontline interview, Verando noted that some people were near the cave picnicking and found Faith's purse along with other belongings the day after she went missing. But it took a lot longer to find her because of the size of the area and, like, how deep it went. Yeah.
So she didn't make it home from the disco at all? That's what I found.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she was at the disco. She was, like, heading home. We'll find out later the exact details. But at this point, all we know is...
She didn't make it home.
She didn't make it home. Okay. Missing for 8 days. 8 days later, they found her body.
Did she live alone?
No.
Or her mother?
Yeah, she was only a teenager.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, Faith had been found naked with approximately 17 stab wounds. She showed signs of rape. Her throat had been cut, and her fingers were also reportedly cut off. Apparently, there was a note near Faith's body that read, "You never find her." But unfortunately, tests revealed no fingerprint evidence on the note.
Well, that's overkill.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah. So in a direct quote from the PBS Frontline interview, investigator Verando reported the following regarding finding Faith's body. "I've never seen anything like that, and I've been working violent crimes on both sides, defense and prosecution, for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it. And I guess I was down there, about an hour by myself with her, and about 15 minutes after the shock, I started doing what a policeman was supposed to do. I started making notes and description of what I saw and things like that. The tragedy utterly devastated the community, leaving a hurricane of emotions and uncertainties. In his own words again, from the PBS Frontline interview, investigator Verando stated, "This is the crime that caused everybody to start locking their doors. This is a very small country community." So similar to the case that you cover from our area.
Yeah, like it's small enough that like everyone knows the details, knows the person, knows it's just hitting everyone hard.
Well, yeah, not only that, but it's a community that left their doors open, come on by, like...
People still leave their doors unlocked.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%.
Shouldn't, but do.
Yeah. You shouldn't, but
that's
it
how things
happens.
get stolen.
That's how things get stolen and people die, but, like, it wasn't until this that I think people really started considering...
that, like, stuff goes down and they need to be a little more...
You can't trust your neighbor.
Alert.
Yeah. So now we're going to move into another tragedy that occurred nearby. So 16-year-old Debbie Morris and her then 20-year-old boyfriend Mark were sitting in Mark's car drinking milkshakes on May 31st, 1980 in Madisonville. Between 11:30 and 11:45 p.m., while the two were sitting in front of the water enjoying their evening, a random truck pulled up beside them. Deb recalled in the PBS Frontline interview that she had asked Mark whether he knew who pulled up beside them. Kind of like, do you know these people? Like, do you recognize them? This, that, and the other. When all of a sudden, two men came out of the truck with guns heading towards them.
I feel like I'm out. Bye!
Just start checking the milkshakes, just hoping to dear God.
Start the car!
Yeah, start the car now. So the men forced Debbie and Mark out of the car, allegedly reporting that the two men had told them not to say anything and that they wanted their money. The men had also allegedly told the couple that they had killed before and wouldn't hesitate if Debbie or Mark came to did any sudden movements or said anything.
Yeah, I'd be like frozen in time. I'd be like, okay, take it all. I'm done. I'm just gonna like sit here in a fetal position and cry.
But this is where things get ickier, even more icky. So the two men apparently took the couple out of the area in their car. They weren't there to mug them. Let's just get that straight. They lied. They lied right off the hop. So Debbie reported in the PBS Frontline interview that the two men went on to torture Mark, in a direct quote from the website article. And they stabbed his side and cut his throat, burned him with cigarettes, and like tied him to a tree, and then they shot him in the back of the head.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So Mark's body would be left in Alabama, and a good plot twist, he would go on to apparently survive the incident.
What?
I know. Yeah.
But that's good for like, I don't know, the head trauma, the slit throat, but okay.
Yeah. I know, because it was kind of confusing, and I'm going to spill the tea now.
Yes.
This case was so hard to break down in the sense of there was so much information, but not specific information, which we all know I need specific information.
We need the deets.
We need the full details. We can't just go with little bits of pieces. Yeah.
Yes.
This isn't, a puzzle. Well, it's a puzzle, but it's a puzzle with missing pieces, and it's driving me insane.
We want all 5,000 pieces.
Exactly. I want to make that beautiful picture of a dog, puppies, everything, because we're going to need it soon. So, Debbie recalled in that same PBS Frontline interview that at one point the two men seemed like they weren't really sure what they were going to do with her, which I can imagine is frightening on top of the already traumatic experience already unfolding. Debbie would be held captive by these two men, being physically, emotionally, and sexually abused from Friday when they picked her up until Sunday morning, so all weekend long. Oh
my God.
Yeah. So they had taken her through Mississippi to Alabama. They also went to Fricky's Cave. I feel like I'm misspelled it in this section, but I think it's Frick's Cave. And at one point, the two men took her to another man's trailer. At this point in time, Debbie reportedly witnessed the three men using drugs, not specifically sure which ones, but they were partying, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Time and torture carried on, and Debbie had mentally prepared to try and escape when the two men had taken her to a cemetery outside of Madisonville. In a surprise twist, apparently the two men let Debbie leave. She kind of like slowly walked away, like I think facing towards them, like
just backing up slowly.
Yeah, and then like slowly like kind of turned around and started walking, and they actually left. Like they passed her. They drove away. Yeah.
What the fuck?
I know.
Can we take me to a cemetery? I'm like, this is where I die. There's probably already a grave buried, like built, like dug out for me.
Yeah.
This is where it ends.
I'll just dig my own grave at this point. So she started, like, as soon as she saw the car pass, she was like, fuck this shit. Probably started...
Booked it.
Yeah, booked it into town. Previous to her leaving, there was kind of like a stated threat to Debbie that if she told police, she'd be murdered. But in a very heroic way, maybe thinking, you know, I'm not going to let this happen to someone else, she went to police.
Good.
Which, thank God. So... When Debbie was giving her statement to deputies, she reportedly heard about what happened to Faith Hathaway. What stood out was the place where Faith was left, Frick's Cave, as it was a location that Debbie reported being taken to and raped while there. There's a lot more detail of Debbie's experiences that I didn't really highlight, like I didn't take as much of a deep dive. But not because it's not important, because obviously this is fucking hugely important to the case, but there's just so much else to this case, and I want to make sure that we cover as much as we can without, you know, me losing my mind, because like I said before, this was a really hard case to cover.
Yeah, even this detail so far, like this would be a lot of research and just hard to write and cover and get everything organized.
Yeah. Also, on top of that, Debbie eventually released a book called Forgiving the Dead Man Walking, which I would highly recommend checking out, as well as the interview she did with PBS for more details, which, trigger warning, some of it's probably going to be hard to read for people. So, we've discussed Faith, we've discussed Debbie, and now to shine a light on the two reported men that caused all this darkness. So first, we're going to start off with Robert Lee Willie. We don't like a Willie here on this show. So Willie was apparently born on January 2nd, 1958. Begrudgingly, he is a Capricorn, but I don't accept him as part of the Capricorn tribe. I'm just going to put that out on blast.
He's shunned.
He's shunned. So he apparently had 4 brothers, and his parents, Elizabeth and John, they were from Covington, Louisiana. On the Murderpedia website, they have an article by Christopher Buchanan with the title, Louisiana, a Murder, a Movie, and a Wink, because... Spoiler alert, there's a movie. I will talk about it later.
Great.
Where Willie was described as the following in a direct quote. So Willie was well known to police in the St. Tammany, I almost said St. Tammy, but St. Tammany parish. He had a reputation for being a knife man, carrying with him almost proudly a string of arrests that began at the age of 14 with a shoplifting charge and included burglary, assaulting a police officer, and breaking out of jail.
Well, he's like the little daredevil.
Yeah, a little bit of a... I can hear the song Bad to the Bone playing in the background, but, like, not in a great light, you know what I mean? So in an article for the Clarion Ledger, Willie apparently reported that he started smoking pot when he was 13, and 3 years later, he had dropped out of high school. He eventually left home and began using heroin at this point as well.
Oh, great trigger choice.
Yeah. Willie's dad, John Willie Jr., was reportedly convicted for second-degree murder in the 80s. He also served time for manslaughter, cattle theft. He stole a cow.
Like father, like son? Like, what the fuck?
I know. An aggravated battery. So just not...
The best role model already.
Well, no, and... I think, his dad's reputation kind of preceded Willie, right? So, like...
Might as well carry on.
Yeah. So, as he got older, Willie, a.k.a. Robert Lee Willie, worked as a truck driver, a riverboat driver, and made income by also selling drugs and stealing, as one does. You know, in this economy... I get it.
Must do, I guess.
Exactly. So, in one article by the Gazette, Willie had allegedly beat and drowned a man before proceeding to steal $10,000 worth of marijuana, which we will get to later on, I promise. Fingers crossed, we will get to it. But now we're going to talk about the next person, or kind of introduce the next person to the stage, which is Joseph Jesse Vaccaro. I couldn't find much on him other than he was from Pearl River, and I am going to assume he was around the same age as Willie. But once again, like, I don't know his astrological sign. I don't know what his family was like. We don't know his favorite color. There's not a lot going on. Not that I really want to know, because...
Other than he has bad choice in friends and bad choice in actions and hobbies he does, apparently.
Yeah. Choices.
Bad choices.
Bad choices. So Vaccaro and Willie apparently met in jail, and once they were both out, they would essentially party for weeks on end, according to reports. So as discussed, we know what happened to Debbie from her account and other reports, but now I'm going to focus more into detail of what took place the night that Faith went missing and how these two come into play. So this is, again, trigger warning.
Lovely.
Sorry. Welcome to Wierd Distractions podcast, where we make everyone utterly depressed. I'm your host, Alex, and I'm sorry.
Not sorry.
So at approximately 4:30 a.m. on the morning of May 28th, 1980, Willie and Vaccaro offered a ride home to Faith Hathaway from the Lakefront Theater. In the Clarion Ledger article I had mentioned earlier, Willie reportedly claimed that the deadly bender that they were on, so they were partying a lot. I should mention that, yeah, they were partying a lot.
They were probably out of it.
Yeah. So they were on this bender, they were robbing stores while they were drinking, and this was obviously before they kidnapped Debbie and her boyfriend Mark, but this is when, on May 20th, they crossed paths with Faith. Probably not, the most sober of folks, but, no excuse.
Near the disco.
Yes. So Faith had asked to be taken home, probably given the men her address. However, instead, they blindfolded her and took her to Frick's cave, where she would later be found. So according to the court documents, once the three arrived at the location, Willie and Vaccaro proceeded to rape Hathaway before one of them stabbed her in the throat multiple times and the other holding her hands behind her. Willie and Vaccaro then left the scene and left Faith where she would later be found. On June 3rd, 1980, Willie and Vaccaro were arrested in Arkansas for something unrelated to Faith's murder. This is where things get, I wasn't able to find definitive information as to, what their arrest in Arkansas was about.
Okay.
If anyone does know, if you're from Louisiana, because we do have listeners in Louisiana, I forgot to tell you that.
Nice.
We finally hit that state, which is... but if anyone knows, can you send us an email, if you know more or heard more? Because, yeah, I tried to look, but I couldn't find anything particular. But I don't know if they were arrested and the Arkansas police thought something was maybe up, or if they thought there was some kind of relation to Faith's case. I don't know if something was said, or I don't know if they just meant, I just don't know. We just don't know. The moral of the story is I don't know. I don't know. But regardless, the Arkansas police called investigator Verando from Louisiana to fly in and talk to the two, which was clutch. Yes. Great
we love
move.
Cross work with police.
We love collaboration and communication between police forces.
Yeah.
So according to the interview that he had with PBS Frontline, investigator Verando reported that he was talking to Willie at first in Arkansas, of course, mostly about kind of mundane things, nothing of really nothing really great, nothing really, spectacular at the beginning. He kind of talked about his background, got to know him a little bit eventually. And then I think at some point he kind of dropped the information about Faith Hathaway, kind of seeing is he going to say something? Is he gonna, does he have any connections to it? What are his thoughts on it? He was just doing, police work.
Yes.
At some point, Willie acknowledged that he was that he basically had this kind of bad boy reputation. So he's yeah, I'm kind of a big fucking deal. I don't know if you know me.
I'm a douche.
I'm kind of a douchebag, but yeah. But that's not actually what he said, so don't quote us on that. But that's our interpretation of this. That's our
That's our perspective?
That's our perspective. That's our perspective.
It's a rough day.
Yes. So, Detective Verando kind of agreed, oh yeah, you're such a bad boy, and you're on all these, newspapers for, all the shit you do, this, that, and the other. Kind of, stroking his ego a little bit, just being oh yeah,
a big deal and you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Willie then apparently said to Detective Verando, yeah, I'll tell you about it, in reference of Faith Hathaway.
Okay.
Yeah, I killed her. Or I was with Joe when he killed her. I'll give you an interview.
Just come out right with it.
Yeah.
I did it. No big deal.
So after being incarcerated for a couple of days, the two apparently confessed to the murder of Faith on June 10th. During their separate confessions, both men tried to blame the other for the rape and stabbing of Faith, which this is something that will continuously come up even in the trial. So they're both...
Yeah, which sucks. It's always when you have a duel of sorts, it's always he said. You're this is getting us nowhere.
Yeah. It's kind of I'm going to point... It's kind of like that Spider-Man meme. I feel like I've referenced that meme so many times on this show.
Yeah, it's just you.
Yeah, it's we're going to point at each other, and you're actually guilty for it, but maybe I'm guilty for it, but we're both guilty for it. At the end of the day, they're both fucking guilty. They're not in the greatest stance. Willie apparently told Verando that at one point, while Vaccaro was stabbing Faith, he said, and this is a direct quote, This bitch won't die. This whore won't die, along with other graphic details of what took place.
Is this why there was so much overkill?
Yeah. So, in the trial, which we're going to get to, Faith's own mother would have to hear the reported last words of her daughter, which she shared in the PBS interview. The last words were, and this is direct quote, "Please go away. Leave me alone. Let me die by myself."
That's so heartbreaking.
Right?
Well, you've already been stabbed umpteen times. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, like, what was the actual definitive, like, cause of death, whether it was, like, the slit of throat or the whatever, but it's like...
I couldn't imagine being a parent and having to hear... It's like
that.
the Christine Heron case, like...
Yeah, like, having to hear him be like, she should have screamed. I'm like, that's disgusting. No.
Yeah. It doesn't... Yeah. Yeah, this was really hard.
Yeah.
This may be, like, one of the hardest cases I've investigated.
There's already, like, a lot of heartbreaking details.
Yeah. So... as some of you may have guessed, unfortunately, the story isn't even nearly over yet. So we're going to now focus on the trial.
Which probably is shit.
Well, we'll get to it.
Okay.
You might
it usually is, I find. But...
Yeah, but both Willie and Vaccaro go to trial for the murder of Faith at the same time. So I'm going to be completely transparent and honest. I may gloss over a couple of things. Mm-hmm. Just for the sake of mental capacity. Like, I'm not going to go into full detail about, like, each court hearing. Mm-hmm. Not that I do. Or not that you do. Not that we do.
We give you the good gist of what is the most important details.
Yeah, like I said, if you want more information, definitely check out the PBS article, because it had a lot. But first and foremost, I do want to address the note that I had mentioned earlier. Remember the note that was left near
Faith? Oh, yeah, you won't find her or something?
Yeah. Apparently, Vaccaro was ruled out as writing said note because he was illiterate.
Oh.
Sometimes it helps to be illiterate.
Helps to, whatever.
Ignorance is bliss, you know? Yeah. According to the court appeal transcript I read, they mentioned, quote, Willie's counsel did not engage a handwriting expert because investigation indicated it would be futile. So I'm going to let you take that and digest it and come up with your own conclusions.
This is ridiculous.
So... the trial begins, and let's just say Willie decides that this is his time to shine and be an absolute shithead and the worst kind of person right now.
Because he's
in the trial. Okay. Yeah. So during the trial, Willie would go on to explain how much he enjoyed raping Faith while her mother and stepfather were in the courtroom, along with other family members. Her sister was in the courtroom as well. I don't know specifically, but yeah, it's still not.
Even, like, I get, like, some of when you have criminals in court and they say, like, Ted Bundy, like, they try to have their own heyday and be their own lawyer and live in it again. Yeah. Just to go into those details and make it seem like it's so gratifying for you, it's disgusting.
I know.
Ugh.
I know, but it's like that extra push of, I'm going to say something so obscene because I know the family is here and I just want them to know, like, how little I care, almost, right? Yeah, so in a direct quote from the PBS interview, Faith's mother stated about the experience of, seeing Willie in court and having to hear his story. I never saw any remorse from them, being Willie and Vaccaro. I sat there all through the pre-trial hearings, the trials, the appeals, and I looked for any remorse or anything whatsoever that they could have been sorry for. Like some of the crimes that they have committed because they had been on a crime spree. They never, she reported that she never saw any remorse. They made me feel like if they got a chance to do it again, that's what they would do.
Ugh.
Which, yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah. Debbie and Mark were asked to testify against Vaccaro and Willie during Faith's trial. In the Times Picayune article by Jason DeParle, it was documented that Willie was observed to be blowing kisses at Debbie in the courtroom, which that's got to be fucking triggering as all hell.
Yeah, like you're already going through this trial, which is already enough to relive the details, and then you have to have them...
of your own case at a trial of someone else who died.
Yeah. You're sitting there being like, oh my god, I'm so lucky to be alive, but you're helping this case for this person that they murdered.
That was around the same...
could have been me.
Yeah, was around the same age, because I think Faith was 17 when she passed away, and Debbie was 16, literally a year older than her.
Yeah. I'd be cringing in my skin just watching them kiss.
Crawling. Yeah. When Mark apparently approached the stand, Willie was observed to be dragging his finger across his throat in a, quote, menacing way. So kind of like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. You know what I mean? Which...
again, you're surviving all of what they did to you.
Yeah. If I was in that courtroom...
I was like as much as like can't even put into words how that feels, because like you want to be the defendant to help put it away, but you're like, I have to relive this, I have to watch them there, like, and go through all of it again.
Yeah, so props to Debbie and Mark.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hug them both and, like, just tell them how fucking resilient they are.
Mm-hmm.
And Faith's family. Like, I'm not gonna also, you know, dismiss the fact that they probably knew about Debbie and Mark's case, or were learning about Debbie and Mark's case as it was happening, and being like, oh my god, these two caused so much chaos.
Yeah.
Like Faith's mother had said, you know, if they got the chance to do it, she felt that they would
probably do it again.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, according to reports, Debbie's testimony really painted the picture for the jury regarding what could have taken place during the murder of Faith based on what she experienced herself. So, Debbie explained in a coverage on Murderpedia by Christopher Buchanan that it was Willie who was the lead, as Vaccaro was, quote, so brain dead from drugs, he couldn't figure anything out. There's no question in my mind that Willie was in charge.
I can see that. He seems to be the more dominating, or...
Yeah, and it sucks because we don't really know much about Vaccaro.
To know the more details of, could he be that one?
Yeah, exactly. And I also apologize, I apologize to those who might have known Vaccaro, and if I'm butchering the last name, but to be honest, I'm not sorry to him for butchering his last name, so...
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. So, Willie and Vaccaro would be found guilty of the rape and murder of Faith Hathaway, along with a guilty verdict for kidnapping. For the murder and rape of Faith, Vaccaro got life imprisonment with an additional 4 life sentences. Vaccaro reportedly missed getting the death penalty because there wasn't a unanimous jury. Willie, on the other hand, was sentenced to death by electrocution. The court proceedings weren't done for these two, though. They'd have to stand for what happened to Debbie and Mark still. They also faced and were convicted for federal kidnapping conspiracy charges because they crossed state lines through Mississippi and Alabama, with Debbie, who was a minor at the time, so not great.
Nope.
The two, I believe, received more charges on top of this. Willie and his lawyer did try and appeal the death penalty and stayed the execution. However, it was denied. Some of the arguments on the appeal included 4 of the jurors who convicted Willie also participated in the trial of Vaccaro. The trial court failed to change the venue of the trial as requested, and ultimately there were a bunch of different reasons, but they were denied.
Good.
Yeah, so even though Willie and Vaccaro were being charged with the same things, I think Willie received the death sentence, in my opinion, based on what I read and like my perception of the situation, because it was so heavily painted that he was the leader and that he might have actually been the one that
kind of organized and orchestrated everything.
Yes, exactly. So regardless, Willie went on and pled guilty for another murder, the 1978 murder of Dennis Hemby near Covington. So do you remember when I mentioned the $10,000 worth of weed that Willie had claimed to have stolen?
He murdered that guy?
Yeah. So according to Willie, he and his cousin, Perry Wayne Taylor, had beaten and drowned Dennis before going on to steal $10,000 worth of marijuana from him. Not sure why or what the reason was, but as you can expect, more charges.
Lovely.
So Taylor apparently would go on to plead guilty to manslaughter and would be sentenced a 21-year sentence, while Willie was given, I think, like 2 more life sentences, but really...
What's 2 more? Like, it's already life.
Yeah, like, he's already on death row.
Yeah.
So, like, before we chat about Willie any further and about, like, you know, his death, we need to introduce another key player into the story.
Oh?
Yeah, so welcome to the main stage, Sister Helen Prigine. So the next chapter in this whole case is about Sister Helen Prigine, who is a Roman Catholic sister who was born on April 21st, 1939 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She was known as a teacher and one of the sisters of Saint Joseph of Medale from New Orleans. My apologies if I butchered that. She is most famously known to be an advocate against the death penalty.
Oh, so we're not gonna like her.
Well, I don't know. I'm on the fence about her. Because I'm on the fence about the death penalty. Hot take. I'm not for it. I'm just gonna share my thoughts and opinions because I knew we were gonna have to talk about this. But I'm not necessarily for it because I do feel like there is a history of people getting it wrong. And
yes, that is very true. They're executed on either innocence or just yes.
Yeah, but
when it's proven
definitively that this person did this thing.
And they're confessing, and they're telling you the details of all the gore they did.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, then it's like, you know... But maybe instead of the death penalty, maybe in the future we could just, like, ship them out to space. You know, just see what happens.
Just freeze.
Yeah. Exactly.
In time.
Exactly. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand. Like, I
understand.
Yeah, I'm not... I hate the saying eye for an eye. Mm-hmm. Because
like, just because someone dies, someone else needs to die. Like, truthfully, no, but...
But also the way that the justice system, in terms of, like, jails, for example, I don't know if a lot of them are actually helping rehabilitate people either.
Yes. Like, so, I think, like, if you're actually being really rehabilitated, or if you're just, this is my stay, I'm just going to get through it, go back out, I'm going to be a shitty person again.
Yeah. So, I think the takeaway from our opinions, for our listeners who are wondering, is we need to put more supports in jails to actually help people...
actually want to change their lives.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Hot take. Ended. Anyways, back to the sister. So, Sister Helen Pergine became a spiritual advisor to Willie, counseling and essentially, you know, just being a spiritual support, you know, during his last days on death row. She would go on to write the book, Dead Man Walking, an eyewitness account of the death penalty in the United States, after witnessing the execution of Willie and another inmate by the name of Patrick Saunier. Sister Helen Pergine, in a SparkNotes kind of explanation of things, felt that the death penalty was cruel and that those convicted could be rehabilitated as opposed to, you know, sentenced to death. Which, like, this is where I'm like, I get where she's coming from. Because I would also, like, that would be such, like, a new life. Because sometimes I think people get caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time, or, you know, they're struggling with their mental health and need support. You know, with proper supports, they could better themselves and stop committing crimes. But, like, you know, I'm not here to, let's say...
There's some people that, yes, like, are psychopaths, and that's just the way they are.
For example, I know he's dead now, but Sam Little. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want him walking the earth anymore. I'm sorry, like, straight up, because we know what he did. He confessed to what he did. We know, right? Same with Ted Bundy. Fuck that dude. I will comment that I did read some of Sister Helen Pergine's book. There's a chapter on the PBS Frontline website that I'm obviously heavily referencing to, as mentioned. Specifically, chapter 6 was on the website. So this is where Helen meets Elizabeth and Vernon and speaks to them at their home about kind of like what happened to Faith, who Faith was, this, that, and like kind of really getting more of a picture of Faith, right? You know, before the pardon board hearing for Willie. So she went before, I think they were trying to get his execution stayed, which we both know didn't happen. Based on this, I kind of got the sense of, like, compassion coming from Sister Helen Pergine for Faith's family, who obviously were seeking out the death penalty. Like, they wanted him to be executed. Like,
they wanted their eye for an eye.
Yeah, which is totally fair and understandable, because, once again, that's a process of grief, right? So, but obviously she still acknowledged her stance, which was obviously against it, which brings us to the execution day.
Okay.
So Willie had a lot of things to say leading up to his execution. Not great things.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Not, you know, giving out recipes, telling people how to organize their home. Like, nothing that we could take and be like, okay, that's important.
No takeaways, okay.
Yeah, but we're going to quote some of the things. This just kind of emphasizes the fact that he kind of was, as you've called him out numerous times,
a shitty person.
A shitty person. Hey, new shitty person for a shitty person shelf. Yay. But boo.
Yes.
We're like, yay, but wait a minute.
Yes.
So, in one quote from Willie, he said, "I don't run from anything. People say I'm an animal, but they wouldn't say it to my face. I wouldn't say I'm an animal, but I'm a cold person."
Okay.
It gets worse. So Willie acknowledged that although some people may have thought he had wasted his life, being in his early to mid-20s when all this kind of went down, he kind of begged to differ. So, in a direct quote from the Clarion Ledger article, "I've wasted it, but I've also enjoyed it. I've lived a good life. Some people might not necessarily agree with that comment. We don't." Hot take.
I've lived a great life. I beg to differ.
Yes. Okay, sir. Willie then apparently shared that if he wasn't necessarily behind bars, he wouldn't necessarily have any issues occupying his time. And another direct quote from the same article, "I would join a terrorist organization. I'd rob banks. The government insures their money, so I'd rob them."
Yeah, I'd use my spare time to be more shitty and kill more people, being a terrorist, and go steal money. Great life choices.
I just can't. Like,
If that's your outlook in life,
like this guy obviously had some form of like personality disorder in the sense of he's just saying obscure things to get attention though.
Yeah, like he's very, very vibrant in that way.
Yeah.
Of like me.
So he further went to share his admiration for the ideas from Fidel Castro and Hitler.
Great role models.
Yeah, so specifically on Hitler, his take, Willie had this to allegedly state. In a way, he was supreme and, in a way, he was a nut. He did what he thought was best. He was going to build a superior race. I don't admire him for killing people or being what he was, but I admire his ideas to advance the world.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't admire him for killing people. That's what you did.
Yeah, but yeah, that's
what you did.
That's the thing. He's like, I think it was kind of shitty that he killed so many people, but like,
I'm getting away for murder, but whatever.
Well, he didn't get away with it.
But I'm going away.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm going to die.
I thought you said he got away with it. I was like, no. Christy, no.
I'm going away.
Yeah, no. Willie. What
choices?
What's going on with the Willies in the world? Because
there's a lot of bad Willies.
Y'all need some help.
Yes.
We're worried about the Willies of the world. Willie, who once again was being supported and counseled by Sister Helen Pergine, also made sure to allegedly comment that he believed in God. Before further stating, I'm no hypocrite. I didn't come to prison to be born again. I figure the sins I've committed, God gave his son for them. I'm going to do all right.
I'm just, like, poking my eyes out.
You know that meme or that gif of, who is it? Julia Roberts, where, like, all the math equations are covered? That's me trying to understand this motherfucker.
I'm the little, like, fuzzy white creature that's like this with the hands.
Oh, yeah, like, why?
Like,
why?
What?
Why?
That's me. That's my meme. That's my meme the whole episode.
This entire episode is why? Why? Seriously, though, why? So, Willie was set to go to the execution chair on December 28th, 1984, 4 years after the tragic death of Faith and the tragic encounter Debbie and Mark had to face when Willie and Vaquero walked into their lives. During his final hours, Willie spent time with his mother, 4 brothers, and sister Helen Pergine. His final meal was fried fish, oysters, and shrimp with some french fries and a salad. In comparison to perhaps always having something to say, during the time he was apparently observed to be quiet leading up to the chair, which is probably for the best.
Yeah, because the thing when you do speak, it's terrible.
It's questionable at best.
And high-class meals, I must say.
Yeah, I know. When I was reading, I was like, fuck, I would give anything for Louisiana food.
Mm-hmm.
But
you get what you get for your last meal.
Exactly. So, in the viewing room sat Faith's family along with Sister Helen Pergine. He was escorted to the chair by 6 guards. He acknowledged Faith's family with the following quote, and this is like the most infamous quote from this whole thing. I would just like to say, Mr. and Mrs. Harvey, that I hope you get some relief from my death. Killing people is wrong. That's why you've put me to death. It makes no difference whether it's citizens, countries, or governments. Killing is wrong.
That takes me back a little bit because that's something that should be said, but weird coming from him.
To me, like, I had a hard time with this quote because...
Like, was it rehearsed?
That's what I'm wondering.
Because, like, all the rest of the things you say are not nice.
And questionable.
Yes.
And fucking weird and make no sense.
I think it was this last hurrah of, like, let me show you I am rehabilitated. I'm gonna die.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's been documented that at one point after he was strapped into the chair and the typical hood was placed over his head, that he asked Warden Frank Blackburn to remove the hood. Once the hood was removed, he allegedly winked at Sister Helen Pergine before the hood was placed back on his head. Allegedly around this time too, Sister Pergine began praying, stating, "Forgive those who collaborate," which I don't really know what that means. But she started praying outwardly, loudly during this time.
That's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So he put the hood on to die.
Yeah.
But he's like, take it off for a second.
And then winked at her.
And they're like, fuck you, and put it back on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if they said fuck you, but like...
That's what I'm saying what went down.
Yeah, exactly. So shortly after the coroner would pronounce Willie dead at 12:15 at the age of 26 years old.
What? I didn't realize she was that young.
Yeah. So the aftermath. As mentioned, Sister Helen Pershing documented her beliefs against the death penalty, along with her encounters with death row inmates in the book, which was eventually adapted into a movie that was released in 1995.
Called?
Dead Man Walking. Which starred Susan Sarandon, who played Sister Helen Pershing, and Sean Penn, who played the character Matthew Poncelet, a character apparently based off of Willie.
I don't think I've seen this.
I've never seen this movie before. I've never even heard of this movie before this.
It is a top, like, the title sounds familiar, but no.
We'll have to watch it. Yeah. So the storyline, as written by Tad Dibburn on imdb.com, states the following. A convicted murderer on death row and the nun who befriended some, through the portrayal of finely drawn characters in their interaction as the days, hours, and minutes tick down to the condemned man's execution, powerful emotions are unleashed. While Matthew Poncelet and Sister Pershing desperately try to gain a stay of execution from the governor or the courts, scenes are cut from the brutal crime, gradually revealing the truth about the events that transpired. In addition to her temporal help, the nun also tries to reach out spiritually and assist as a guide to salvation. It's a lot.
Yes.
So, as also mentioned earlier, Debbie would go on to release her own book called Forgiving the Dead Man Walking. According to the book summary from the HarperCollinsChristian.com website, Debbie explores her faith and questions whether or not someone can essentially be forgiven for what they've done. Faith's family, as far as I know, have not been in the public in terms of their own books or movies by any means.
Nor would I want to.
Well, and that's the thing. So everyone grieves differently.
Yes, like whether you want to tell your story or you want to just not.
So after the execution of Willie, the family did share their relief that Willie was no longer a living concern. And even though there is a lot of Hollywood notoriety around this case, at the end of the day, it seems to be focused on Willie and Sister Helen Pershing, which I'm not for.
No, because that's not the point.
No.
It's to be on the victims and what they went through and to never happen again.
Exactly. I can say that I appreciate Debbie for being brave enough to write her side of the story. Like, I think that's great. That's awesome. But I kind of hope someday someone maybe does the same for Faith, because at the end of the day, it kind of felt like, even just in the research, it was so focused on like Sister Helen Pershing and Willie and like a little bit of Debbie. But the person that actually died, like the other person that died, because we know Willie died, but
other than the details of what happened, like there was no focus on her.
Yeah, the person that was murdered, there was barely any information on her.
No, yeah, which is disgraceful.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the case.
That's a hot take.
Yeah, I'm sweating. A lot.
Profusely, no.
Profusely. So shout out to my resources, which there are a lot, so bear with me.
I see that.
Yeah, it's like a Stephen King novel over here. So, Enterprise Journal article, Dead Man Revisited by Alan Sayer, July 18th, 2003. The New York Times article, Louisiana Killers Put to Death, December 29th, 1984. The Crime Door app.
An app?
An app, yeah. I love their app. It's really, really good. So the Find a Grave website, Daily Word article, 25 years later, detective tells story of infamous case on July 13th, 2003. Good old Murderpedia, PBS Frontline website, which is from the WGBH Educational Foundation. The Alcatron website, Robert Lee Willie, updated December 15th, 2020. The appeal docket, which is docket number 84-3219, September 7th, 1984. The Clarion Ledger article, Convicted Killer Has No Regrets for Life of Drugs, Rape, and Murder, which was posted on December 27th, 1984. The Gazette, The Killer Who Boasted I Don't Run From Nothing, December 29th, 1984. The Justia U.S. Law website, State vs. Willie. The Times Picayune article, which, sorry if I butchered that. Victim's Parents Watched Willie Die by Jason DeParley on December 28th, 1984. The associate producer, Christopher Buchanan, which was the article that I read off Murderpedia called Louisiana, a Murder, a Movie, and a Wink.
Gross.
www.sisterhelen.org. Dpedia.org, UPI Archives, Robert Lee Willie, who mocked death mock death by placing a ... by Janet Plume on December 20th, 1984. The HarperCollinsChristian.com website, Forgiven the Dead Man Walking by Debbie Morris, Greg Lewis. And finally, shout out to our favorites at IMDb website, Dead Man Walking, which once again, the movie released in 1995, which the storyline was written by Tad DeBurn.
Wow.
Holy moly. I'm sweating still. So yeah, that is a rough fucking case.
That was a rough story.
Yeah, but I hope it brought a distraction from everybody and just a reminder that unfortunately there are some really shitty, or there's always, let's be real. Yeah, there's really shitty people there that have to fucking ruin it for everybody. And, you know, hopefully Faith is resting in peace. Hopefully her family is doing okay.
Hopefully everyone's slowly getting there.
Yeah.
Trying to get back to living their life a little bit in whatever capacity they can.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Christy, can you tell these fine, weird people who are listening to us where they can find us, how they can reach us, how they can support the show if they want to support the show?
Yes, hello, weird friends. Please find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple. We would love a review. 5 stars.
5 stars would be stellar.
Any platform you listen to us on, you'll find us somewhere. Feel free to reach out. Email weirddistractionpodcast@outlook.com. Give us some listener stories.
Oh, yes.
Some will be coming. We already have some.
Yes.
That'll be exciting.
Yes.
Also, if you have, again, more of the details about that one thing in the story.
Christy doesn't even remember. She's like,
there was so much stuff going on.
It's such a blur. It's such a blur.
Feel free to tweet at us at Twitter and on Insta page. Go over to our Patreon. Again, shout out to Tom.
Yes.
Our lovely follower only. We are on there. Weird Distractions. Have the tiers, extra stories, good stuff. You should sign up.
Yeah.
If you can't or not monetize something little, on Buy Me a Coffee as well.
Yep.
And also on Redbubble for some merch.
Yes.
So go on over there, find all the goodies.
Stickers, hoodies, tank tops, Glocks, mats, you name it.
Whatever, we will put a label on it.
Yeah, exactly. And just so as a reminder, to kind of backtrack a little bit. So our listener tales, we are hoping to read 6 stories from you, the listener.
So far, yes.
So far, yeah. Each episode, we're not really sure how often we're going to be releasing them because it really depends on if you email us at at weirddistractionspodcast@outlook.com. We want to hear your weird tales, whether it was something paranormal, maybe a conspiracy theory that you heard, or maybe an encounter with a folklore creature. Have you seen a puka lately? Like, we want to know. We want to know.
Some personal stories, you encountered some serial killers.
And survived.
And survived to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah.
We get a couple, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting. But yes, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting. And if you need a distraction,
we got you.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Robin Warder from The Trail Went Cold. If you are unfamiliar with my other podcast, I often cover stories from the television show Unsolved Mysteries. For the past 5 years, you've heard me talk about these cases on my own, but now's your chance to hear me have in-depth discussions about them with other people. I want to welcome you to my new project, The Path Went Chilly, where I will be discussing in depth with my 2 good friends and co-hosts cases that I've covered on The Trail Went Cold. Meet my co-hosts. First one up is Jules.
Hi, I'm Jules from the podcast Riddle Me That True Crime, and I have a PhD in transpersonal counseling. I'm not a psychologist or a diagnostician, so don't get too excited. But I can't wait to analyze these cases with these 2 amazing humans. You've already met Robin, now meet Dr. Ashley Wellman.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I have a PhD in criminology, law, and society, and I specialize in trauma victims and survivors. I've spent a great deal of time working with families left behind after homicides with a cold case unit based out of Florida, and I'm also a professor of criminology. I'm so excited to be chatting with 2 of my best friends about the cases that everyone can't seem to get enough of.
We hope in doing so that we will have a clearer perspective of what may have transpired. Oftentimes, Ashley will be totally in the dark.
Jules and I will be telling Ashley a story she may not know much about, so all of her reactions are genuine.
We will be releasing on all major platforms April 8th.
We hope you will join us as we attempt to heat up some ice-cold cases.
The Path Went Chilly will be available every Thursday on all major podcast platforms.
Thanks again for listening to True Crime by Indie Drop-In. If you would like your show featured, reach out to us at Indie Drop-In on all social media or go to indiedropin.com. See you next time.